in the academic year. He has an MSW, and he has been an administrator for social service agencies in 4 states over 20 years, as it's noted in the bio page. And most recently was a program director of community service program overseeing the victim advocate programs. He has a lot to say and a lot of lived experience in social work, and I know some of you are interested and are getting into that. So he has a wealth of knowledge, and on top of that, I just remember him when he did our Taste of Grad School series talking about his work experience, which was really valuable to hear that the hands-on knowledge he received from that, and just very interesting. So thank you, Duan, for coming.
Do I sit down or how do I?
It's up to you if you want to sit for a more casual one or.
So as long as I can see myself.
Yeah.
So really quick, so why is this all important? Like, you know, you've had all these folks coming in talking about all sorts of stuff, and you know, obviously with professionalism. Why do you think this is important or so important? Yeah.
It can help us in networking and making a good first impression.
Okay, I love that. What else? Why do we network? Let's go back to grassroots. Why are you all here? What? To become professionals, right? So at the end of the day, the biggest thing is in order to become a professional, you got to get a job, right? And so this is where my experience comes in. And so just just kind of go over a little bit. I've been in the field for 20 plus years, and so in most of those years I've been an administrator. And so through those times, I've interviewed many folks for positions, and I've seen some of the craziest things that I never thought I would ever see, to folks coming in and demanding a job and expecting to be paid higher than my salary, and they would not take no for an answer. I see people coming in crying because they need a job and they're very desperate about it. And I've seen on the other end where they're just like, they're sharp. They're like, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like better than I am. You know, it's like they came in much more prepared than I ever was. And it's really impressive. And so this kind of all stems back to how you carry yourself, right? Professionalism, what do you think that really means? Like, what is professionalism? And then we'll go into introductions here in a second. Anyone want to take?
Well, it starts off with physical appearance, clothes you wear.
I love that. Okay, first impression, what else? Yeah.
I think it also has to do with the skills that you own. You're an expert in what
All right. So what you bring to the table, right? What knowledge, what skill set, what experience you bring to the table, right? Yes. How you conduct yourself. Really important. Kind of goes back to your first impression, right? And we're going to talk about this because communication, as you'll see, it's not just about communication, right? It's the whole package, right? So again, a little about myself. I try not to date myself too much, but I have my degree from Loyola University in social work. I started off working for substance abuse. That was my first job. You know, when I first graduated, my emphasis for how many we got social workers in the house, right? There's 8 of you guys, or 6. My specialty was school-based counseling. I never worked in the school ever, for better and for worse. But my first job was actually residential, adolescent, substance abuse. And within 2 years, I got promoted and recruited by another company who was a for-profit corporate company that worked with adult substance. And it was one of those high-end, centers where it's like $40,000 a month for you to attend, cash up front. And so quickly I became their administrator, their supervisor, and then just kind of have slowly moved along the pecking orders of that. And along that way, I got married, had kids, and moved from state to state. And hence, I've lived in 4 states. Everywhere I go, I try to, pick up where I left off. And so, and a lot of that stuff I attribute to this. It's just being professional. I didn't have any connections coming down here, but it was just something that it's how you carry yourself. And I'll share a little bit. My wife is an SLP, because I know there's SLPs in the house here too, right? And so I can share a little bit about how she got her jobs and all that stuff. Because again, this whole purpose of this is for you guys to get a job, right? And just kind of piggyback on the elevator speech. We'll talk about that actually your second semester in social work for those of you guys, because we're trying to prepare you for your second year internship. But those elevator speech, you'll if you're in my class, you'll hear this many times, which is you need to practice that. Everybody should have that elevator speech ready to go, just like your resume, right? In the back old days, I always had it emailed to myself. So at any given time, I can get on the computer and email somebody my resume or print it out. I never leave home without it, literally. Like I still have a very old resume on there, just because who knows who you're gonna meet and however, right? And so that's a little about who I am. And so I kind of want to get an idea of who you guys are, so I can kind of get an idea of my audience. And so do you guys just want to do a really quick introduction, who you are and why you're here and what degree? I kind of had a little cheat sheet. There's 5 MS, 8 MSW, 5 PH, right? Or are you
The numbers are a little
skewed a little bit? Okay, but at least somewhat close. So you want to start with who you are?
My name is Maria. I will be starting my MS in counseling here at Cal Fullerton, and I'm here because I'm interested in the mental health, specifically of the Latino population.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Georgina, and I will be working on my MPH over at SBSU.
Okay, very nice.
Hi, my name is Josie. I will be attending Cal State Long Beach for my master's in public health, and I am interested in Asian American nursing.
Very nice.
My name is Gabby. I'm actually going to be attending the master's program in social here at Fullerton, and my focus is mental health.
Very nice.
I'm Michelle. I'm attending Fullerton State Program with W. My focus is mental health, first generation.
Awesome.
My name is Angela. I will be attending Castle Fullerton. The program is MS in counseling, and I'm interested in mental health.
Very nice.
My name is Dana, and I'll be attending care for the Master's Social Work. My concentration is child welfare.
I'm Janet Hernandez, and I will also be coming here for the MSW program, and my concentration is also child welfare.
Okay.
My name is Patricia Forrest. I will be coming here at Cal State Fullerton for my master's in social work, and my concentration is community mental health.
Very nice.
My name is Jessie. I'll be coming here as well for the MSW program, and my concentration is
There's one fly. Oh, there's two.
There's always more. My name is Dexter. Also, I'm doing the MS in counseling. I'm going to work with the community and providing wellness.
Awesome.
My name is Serena. I'll be going to London University for a master's in common disorders, and I want to focus on.
Very nice.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I will be going to Cal State Long Beach for the MPH program.
Okay.
My name is Siali, and I'm attending Cal State Fullerton for a community disorders master, and I am interested in working with patients that face patients.
Wow. Very cool.
Hi, my name is Lori, and I'll be doing my master's in counseling here at Cal State Fullerton, and my master's conference within the last month.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Gareda, and I'm coming here at Cal State Fullerton for communicative sciences and disorders, and I would like to use my bilingual skills to work with both children and adults.
In the school setting or what kind of setting?
Preferably like clinical settings that I've seen children in both populations in clinical.
Okay. Okay. Look, earlier I mentioned about my wife being an SLP. So she's also bilingual in Spanish. I will tell you, for those who are bilingual, it doesn't have to be just Spanish, but it could be any You got to take advantage of that. My wife has never had any problem getting a job. Like when we decided to move down here to California, literally one phone call generated 3 job offers in the Unified School District. So she called Irvine first. And on the spot, just them knowing that she's bilingual, they hired her on the spot. A couple hours later, Anaheim Unified called her, and then Garden Grove called her. And so it's really powerful to have that. You know, again, it's all about how she presented herself, right? But that language is a huge benefit, right? And for those who don't have a secondary language, you know, figure out your other strengths, because once again, your strength is what's going to carry you and getting you that job. Okay. So we kind of talked briefly about this already, but again, now that you kind of have a little more idea, what do you really think it means? You know, about how you present yourself, how you look, how you talk, what else? How you carry yourself, other things that you think what professionalism means. Yes?
Boundaries.
Boundaries. What do you mean by that?
Like you don't want to bring like personal stuff to your work kind of thing, and
I love that. And then I'll take, so everyone has the slides, right?
Yeah.
So you all see, okay. So it's not really a surprise, but later on we'll talk about how boundary could make or break you, right? But yeah, on the same time, it's how you carry yourself, but then how you carry yourself at work, but then how you carry yourself outside in the public, right? I work for a lot of companies where regardless where I'm on or off, they still look at me as a representation of the agency. So if I'm at the beach or whatever, and here's a live example, you know, again, I used to work for substance abuse, and public, you know, full disclosure, I love beer, right? I used to grow up in Oregon. Anyone from Oregon, Portland, right? Microbrew capital. Like there's a lot of beer out there. It's like Starbucks. There's like a microbrew pretty much at every single corner, and you can just, you don't even hop, you're walking and you're there, or you're stopping and you're at another microbrew. But I can't wear T-shirts that has like you know Stone Brewing Company or Kern Brewing Company or any of that stuff, even though I'm off the clock and all this stuff. Because at any given time, if someone ever took a picture of me, or I was like in the, you know, someone who was video recording the, you know, a news or whatever, if they see me, I represent them, and that could come back and haunt me, right? And so you got to be mindful of all this stuff, right? Any other things about professionalism? Like, what else do you think it means?
And off of that, like with social media, like how you represent, like for Cal State Fullerton, I play softball, so I represent the school, and I have a lot of little girls who follow me, so I definitely have to be professional in that sense.
Yeah.
Because anywhere you go, like I can go to the store and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you play for Cal State Fullerton?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like,
Right.
you know, like I do.
Right. And that's, like I say, we'll talk about this a little later on, but it's a huge piece to this, especially nowadays with social media and technology being the way it is. It's completely different from how it was when I started the field, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Okay, so you know, anyone have an example of their experience and how professionalism has helped them or has not helped them in the work field? Because I'm assuming some of you guys have worked already, and it doesn't have to be within your social work or counseling or speech or any of that stuff. But anyone have an example of they want to share of their experience of how professionalism has gotten them somewhere or not gotten them somewhere?
I used to work for a company where I used to help clients out.
Uh-huh.
So I would take one of my clients to go volunteer somewhere, and I used to just interact with everybody and talk to other clients and stuff like that. So then they actually like offered me a job with like a higher pay rate. But then I was already coming to school, so I was like, oh, I can't. Yeah.
But that's awesome, right? That's pretty cool. Great, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Yes.
I was like a law firm.
Uh-huh.
And I used to just cover the front desk. I started connecting a lot with one of the attorneys. And so she actually requested me to be her assistant.
Wow.
So I was able to be her personal assistant, which was an easier job than covering the franchise.
Sure. But that's pretty awesome. That's really awesome. Anyone else wants to share? You know, for me, my background is also, before I started or went into grad school, I worked for Child Protective up in Portland, Oregon. And, you know, as a case manager or child protective worker, I would have to go to court pretty much every day or every other day, at least 3 times a week, you know, on cases. And, you know, I don't know a lot about law, but I don't like losing. And so I've quickly learned that, you know, when you represent, you know, when you go to court, you represent the department or child protective or child welfare. The parents have their attorneys, the kids have their attorney. You don't have an attorney. You represent yourself. And so I quickly learned the ins and outs of the gist of how to be professional. Day number 1, I remember very clearly, and I use this as an example. Again, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I'm wearing Birkenstocks and short and pants. And what's the rule with court? Does anyone know what the expectations are when you go to court regarding shoes? Closed shoes. I don't care if you're male or female. You cannot wear sandals or open-toed shoes, right? That's just an expectation. I didn't know that. Thank God the judge wasn't looking at mine, but was looking at the other attorney who was wearing open-toed heels, and she got nailed for it. So day 1, I learned never to wear my Birkenstocks to court. But then from there, I started learning the ins and outs of how to do this. And from there, I was actually approached by the district attorney and was offered a scholarship to go to law school. You know, and that was a whole nother story. But for me, I couldn't have gotten to that point if it wasn't for me being professional and understanding the rules, even though I wasn't an attorney, even though that was a whole different field, right? But it was just that piece that was able to open up a lot of doors for me. And so hopefully with this, you'll see that, right? I have another example. One of my jobs was a supervisor at Mental Health Association of Orange County. I remember day 1, I was kind of fixing up my office and whatever. And this guy came into my office, sat down, kicks his feet up on my desk, was wearing those, like, you know, jean shorts that's kind of like below the knees. And he's like, Duan, I need to ask you, can I joke with you? And my response was like, you know, in my mind, first off, before I even responded, I was like, who the hell is this guy coming in, sitting down and kicking his feet on my desk that I just cleaned? And what is he doing? And, you know, and then I'm already scanning him. And I'm like, look, he's wearing shorts, he's wearing a t-shirt, you know, baggy shorts. And so is this a staff? Is this a client? Who is this person that's in my office? Quickly, I realized that is one of my staff. So in situations like that, how would you respond to that comment or that question? Just out of curiosity. And what would you guys be thinking based off the scenario that I've shared with you guys? Yeah.
I would think the guy's drunk.
Okay. I like that. I'm not going to ask why you think that, but we'll go with that. Okay. What else? I get where you're going with that. What else? Question? Or? Oh.
I would say or ask if he's on the clock. Like say, like greet him, and then ask if he's on the clock.
Okay.
And then further going to the whole, like if there's rules with dress code and stuff like that, after answering his question, of course.
At the time, there was no rule. But as you know, well, maybe not know, but shortly thereafter, a couple hours later, there was a rule. But for me, even policy or no policy, it's important, right? And I tell my staff this all the time. If I cannot distinguish between client and staff, we got an issue. Why is that the case? Why do you think I made that comment to him?
Because other people might.
Yeah, what happened if the county came in to the office on a spot check? They're doing an audit. They come walking in. How do they know if this is a client or a professional? Right? Anyone else wants to comment in there about that? Right? And so quickly, I'm like, okay, look, you walk in like this is your freebie. Tomorrow, you do this, you're going home, and it's on the clock for you. You're taking a sick day or you're taking a vacation day to go home and change and come back. Right? Because for me, I get it. We're in California, it's hot. You know, we're working with some clients sometimes, not in the best situations. We don't want to be wearing our nice clothes, our church clothes or whatever, but on the same token, you have to look at least somewhat professional and present yourself, right? And so that's one of the biggest things that I want to kind of throw takeaway points for you guys, right? So now that I kind of laid some of the foundation, what do you guys want to get out of this? You know, how can I help you guys with all my years of experience to kind of help you guys further your new career? Anyone have any? Yes.
Being professional in emails.
Oh, I love that one because that's going to be coming up here too. What else?
For me, I will be working with kids. Kind of like what you covered right now is how to respond to different difficult scenarios. For example, I know that there's communication styles, and I tend to not be so assertive, so not being clear and considering their feelings, either I'm too blunt or too passive, so it like sways to the two extremes. And so I would like to learn how you go about responding in a way where you're considering their feelings, but you're also being clear.
All right, I like that. If I don't completely hit all that, can you call me on it as we talk about this? Anyone else? What they want to get out of this? Yes.
How you would ask or approach professional for like job opportunities?
Oh, I love that one too. Can I just answer that right now because it's not on the slide? Again, for me, I've been very fortunate. I'm not gonna lie to you. So has my wife. I don't really think I've applied to too many jobs, and the reason why is again, it's all about this professionalism. It's all about contacts. It's also about how you carry yourself, and then it carries over. Like the job that I had at the adult substance abuse, I didn't even apply. I didn't even put in an application. They sought me out. And how did they sought me out? Because one of the probation officer knew somebody down there, and they talked, and then they talked, and then somewhere along the line, their director reached out to me. Like I didn't know about it. I had to Google them, you know, because I wasn't looking. And the majority of my job was just that. It was through me doing a good job, and then someone else catching it and understanding and seeing it and recognizing it, and then recruiting. And so for me, and so here's a quick story. One of my neighbors, their son graduated from college and wasn't motivated. He wanted to be a history teacher, realized that wasn't his thing. And so he didn't want to get a job. And so he just sat around for months at home doing nothing, playing video games. So the mom came over to me and said, hey, look, Duan, can you have a conversation with my son and try to motivate him and maybe get him into social work or do something? And so I started talking to this guy. And one of the first things I told him was like, hey, look, you don't have to be passionate about your job. And then the mom was like, oh. Where are you going with this, Duan? I'm like, look, let's be real here. We're not all passionate about what we do. The reality is we need to have a job so that we can sustain our quality of life and what we want to do with it. Now, some people are better at other things, and some people are truly passionate, and that's great. But at the end of the day, not everybody are going to be passionate about their field, especially if you've been in the field long enough, right? It's about how you maintain and carry yourself so that you can retire and be comfortable afterwards, right? But for some of you guys who are passionate, that's great. But for most of us, well, I can't say most, but I can say for myself, do I still have passion in about what I do? Yeah, but you know, I'll be the first to tell my staff. It's like, I can't run out on those calls like I used to, because I don't want to. And quite frankly, some of these cases are a little terrifying to me now, you know? And so that passion is not there, but it's about having that job. And so, you know, so I told him, it's like, look, you just got to start applying. And you don't know where that road's going to lead you, right? Because one of the things that I realized, you know, self-disclaimer, I never ever thought I would teach ever. You know, I love social work in the sense that I love helping people, and I love having interns and teaching them and preparing them so that they can be in the field. And I'm very upfront. I'm one of those guys that will, you know, burst people's bubbles, because I feel like it's part of my obligation to kind of really give you guys the real deal about what is expected of you guys when you guys are professionals, right? Instead of like, oh yeah, social work is so great, you're gonna get to draw unicorns and draw rainbows and just walk around and just be all happy. No, it's not like that. There are days that are just like horrible. It's like you see cases that are just like you can't even imagine, and that affects you in many ways. And you have to be okay with that and work through some of that stuff, right? And if you can't, this is not the field for you, right? And so I've talked a lot of people out of the social work field just because, quite frankly, they weren't ready for it. And I'm glad that they did that versus wasting a lot of money and time and doing all this stuff and then going out and then crash and burn, right? And that goes for SLPs as well, right? The public health folks, you're good. You just do contracts and right there. You're all happy about that. But that's some of the realities I want to share with you guys, right? So I don't know if I answered your question because I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of? Okay, well, come back to me afterwards. Okay, so according to the Department of Labor, you know, employer wants a new worker to be responsible, ethical, team-oriented, and to be, you know, and to possess strong communication, interpersonal, and problem-solving skills. Wrap all these together, that's what professionalism is all about, right? This is what I would like you guys, you know, second, you know, point that, you know, walk away. This is what I want you to remember, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you go to the beach or Fullerton or SC or wherever, especially in this field, the field that you guys are all in, it's a tight-knit community. I think you've heard that before from some of the other presenters. It truly is. Even though living in Southern California, I thought, wow, this is huge. This is big area. I can't tell you how many times I will come across my clients. I can't tell you how many times networking has proven to get me the job where I am now. Again, I didn't apply for this job. They came and recruited me 3 years in a row, and I finally, you know, caved into this and conceded that I should be here. But you got to have this, right? This is the total package, right? And hopefully grad school is going to give you this and your experience, right? So we talk about professional communication, and so knowing your audience, right? At the university level, at your internship, at the, you know, for those who are working, your employer, and just, again, we talked briefly about just being out in general public, right? They're all very different. And then so here's the other caveat. Each one of you guys in your own profession has their own standards and expectations, okay? I'm going to talk a lot, I'm going to refer to a lot more on the social work end, which I think carries over to counseling, even public health, sometimes SLP folks. But I want to share that because that's my experience. Between university, internship, employer, and just the general public. So let's just talk about verbal communications, right? How do you talk at a university level? What are the differences when you're talking at a university level? For say, like if I was your supervisor, if I was your instructor, how would you address me at a university level? Professor Tran. Now, why is this important? Yeah.
Because it shows the respect.
Shows the respect. I like that. Anyone else wants to too, right? Am I entitled to have that recognition? You know, because some of your professors are doctorates, you know, and so how would you address them? Doctor. Okay. Now, again, I came from the outside world where like, hey, or like kumbaya, we're all equals, whatever. And for that point, I do consider you guys all equal. Y'all are master students. You're not students in my book anymore. You're professionals, right? And so there's a level of expectation that is higher than what you were when you were just a bachelor's level, right? Hopefully you guys understand that, because if you don't, you need to, right? Because the expectation is much higher now than it ever was when you're at your bachelor's level, right? So yeah, at the school level, communication-wise, ideally, we need to be addressed by our titles or however, right? Now, I kind of cringe at that because I don't care for that too much. But what I do realize in talking to some of my peers is that they don't like to be called by their last name or their first name. You know, we're not on a sports team. Don't come up and say, hey, Tran, how you doing? Right? I'm not on a sports team. Right? And so you got to understand this. Right? Emails. Someone was asking about how to write emails. Oh, here. So emails is really important. Okay? Especially nowadays. Right? We all have access to either our phones or tablets or our laptops, and email is one of the forms of communication that we do. Okay? So here's my question. Why is that so important that you need to be mindful of how you email and compose an email, whether it's to your professors or to your cohort? Why is that important?
Does it also like tell them how you would trust them in the life or face-to-face talk?
Kind of. I'll be honest with you. I'm much more like professional. I don't talk professional in real life, but when I'm emailing, I need to be. Why is that the case? Meaning, I can't say, hey, LOL, how are you doing? What's up? I'm happy, any of that stuff, or just like run on sentences or any of that stuff. Like I try to compose my email to be very grammatically correct and very structured. Why is that the case? What's that? The impression, right? But more importantly, for who? To the intended receiver of the email? That's great, but what happens but to what? It's just to my friends or to my other cohort. They don't really care if I'm professional. Good answer. But my response to this is, how do you know if that email gets forwarded to me as the instructor or to the department chair or to the dean? Then what happens? That's their snapshot of who you are and your representation, right? And so every time I write an email, I always write it as if I was writing to someone way beyond whoever I'm writing to. Because I don't know. Because once I hit that send button, it's out of my control. At least technology-wise, I'm not aware of anything that can delete an email that has already been sent, right? And so once you send it out there, it's out there. And so how do you know they're not going to forward it to someone else, right? So that's why email is really important. Let's talk about text. Because we all text, right? Now this gets really kind of like, now I'm going to not lie to you, my text messages aren't like as professional, but why is texting so important and why do you have to be mindful of texting in the professional scape?
Text can always come out the wrong way you intended them to. So I personally don't like texting.
Yeah.
As far as like if it's with like anyone kind of like job or anything like that. So I always have to be extra careful. Yeah,
you gotta be very careful because again, same concept, and it's easy to throw in those emojis. My wife is like, well, she's not the emoji queen, but she definitely puts a lot of emojis in there, and I'm annoyed by it because I'm like, what the hell does this really represent? It's like, okay, you put a unicorn emoji. What does it really mean, right? And so for me, it's a very different thing. And so text is one thing that you guys would come across because some of your, you guys are going to be at your internship. Most of you guys have internships, right? All you guys? No one, everyone should have an internship, right? And so sometimes your field instructors may be texting you information, okay? From my standpoint, I can't control everybody. But from my point as an administrator, that's a huge no-no. Why do you think that's the case? Communication should not be over text. Why is that? Anyone want to guess? What's that?
You establish boundaries for everyone.
Yeah. I'm assuming you guys had a conversation about where you put your cell phone when you go to bed, right? So boundaries. Also, you get this little ding at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you're a light sleeper, what are you going to do? Oh, it's Johnny from work. Oh, Johnny wants to talk about this. Okay, well, hold on a second. Or it's Mary, my client. Maybe she's in trouble. I need to talk to her, right? There's no boundaries. And then that gets into big issues, right? And again, text message could be saved and be sent off to someone else in a different context, right? And so you gotta be very mindful of that, right? I know a lot of field instructors, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late, or they're talking about their cases through text. Got to be mindful of who your audience is, right? Telephonically, on the phone, again, we talked briefly about the elevator speech. You don't know who's on the other line, right? And so you got to be mindful of how you communicate, right? And then also your dress and your appearance. That's also professionalism, right? And how you communicate like that, right? Any questions so far about these things? Okay, so let's talk about, at the university, we talked briefly about how you need to communicate to your professors, right? So what would an email look like if you were to generate an email? So how would you start off the email if you're emailing a professor? Right? And then you finish off with whatever it is, thank you for your time, and you're done, right? It's not, hey, how are you doing? I just want to know what quiz is next week and da-da-da and all that stuff, right? You make sure it has to be grammatically correct. No run-on sentence, not one big long paragraph, all that stuff, because we're judging you, okay? Now, if any professor sits here and tell you that they're not judging you, they're lying, okay? Because we're all judging you. We're all talking about you way before class starts, okay? We do. It's nature. And especially in the field we are in, especially the counseling, social work, that's what that's how we were trained. That's how we were educated, to assess people. Assessing students is no different than assessing our clients, right? And so we do all this stuff indirectly and directly. And so you need to be aware of how you're presenting yourself, right? Should you ever text a professor? Someone's gonna say, no, it's a tricky question.
I don't think they should have their phone number. I mean, they can call, probably, but not like this.
Yeah. Okay.
We had an online teacher, and he specifically said, "Don't email me, text me."
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this isn't your one.
Yeah.
What if they happen to be they're your mentor?
Yeah. Okay. Again, there's no right or wrong answers to this. My thing is this. You got to look at how this could be used against you. All right. I think that's probably the biggest thing with all this stuff is that's the third takeaway point is how can any of these communication be potentially used against you? Oh, this is all messed up, or, what the F, and all this stuff. How is that little small text could be misconstrued and be against you if something was to happen? That's a big if. Because 99% of the time, nothing happens. Life goes on very copacetic, nothing happens, we're all good. But what happens that one time this gets pulled in? How's it gonna look at you as a professional? Right? And so you gotta be mindful of that. I don't have a clear answer. I just don't feel comfortable. I do know when I first started, I had no problem giving my students my cell phone number because sometimes things happen. they need to get a hold of me so that, you know, if they're running late or if there's a family emergency or whatever, I realize about boundaries. You guys don't sleep, grad students. And so I was getting all these calls and texts, you know, at all odd hours. And I'm like, hey, and then I was like, you know, supporting that by responding back to you guys and like, hey, this is not good for me. And it's not good for you guys either. And so I realized that as I started, you know, this is my 5th year teaching. Slowly, I'm not giving out my cell phone number. Here and there, I give it out just in case if there's a big emergency or whatever. But for the most part, that text thing is stopped, right? Appearance-wise, at the university, how should you guys dress as grad students? I'll put it in. Professional, what does that look like? Yeah.
That's in a way that we represent.
Okay.
At the university itself where we're at.
Okay, I like that. Now, I don't think the school sees it like that. I don't think most departments see it like that. Obviously, when you go to an internship, there is that level of expectation of how you should dress. But in the school setting, for the most part, it's whatever you guys want to wear, right? I don't think the school has like a dress code policy, you know, per se. I could be wrong, but I've seen a lot of funky stuff out on the campus, and I'm like, you know, I get it. We're in California. It's hot. Why not, right? But again, as I mentioned before, you guys are professionals, and so you guys need to think as if you guys are professional, even though you're still grad students, right? And so, how does that change in an internship? Should your verbal communication change? What's the difference in communicating at the school setting versus at your internship? What about your emails?
I think that your internship, you also have to weigh the way that you behave, and that also represents the university and the department. So if you email in a way that's impolite or incorrect, that can make the difference between them having another intern the next following year or not.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing answer. I think that's like the best answer I've seen or heard, right? The big difference is this: you got that many more eyes on you than ever before, especially at an internship. What kind of eyes are looking at you? You got your field instructor. Who else is looking at you and judging you and you know, having their own thoughts and opinions about who you are? The supervisor of the agency. Okay, who else? Staff. Right, so co-workers, so staff, right? Who else? The clients, right? So right off the bat, you got 5 sets of eyes, if not more, staring at you and judging you, right? Much more than at the university level. And here's a kicker, not to scare you guys. At any one given time, if one of those people have a bad thought about you, much harder road to win when a supervisor say, I don't like that person, you know, for whatever reason, right? The reason why we talk about the elevator speech our second semester is because we want to get you guys prepared for your 2nd year internship, right? And one of the things that I tell some of my students is this: sometimes agencies ask the front desk receptionist about their opinions about the internship, about the interns. Does that make sense? Why do you think they do that?
Like the consistency, like you don't want to be like super professional with, you know, the supervisor going rude to the receptionist or something like that.
True story. We had a student come in, check in for her interview. Comes in, hi, I'm so-and-so. I have an interview. Walked away. You know, very dismissive of the, you know, the receptionist. Receptionist gets called in and say, hey, how was that person who greeted you or came in? Oh, she was pretty rude to me. Placement failed. They didn't get the placement. Right? It happens. right? So you got to be aware of again, your surrounding on who is, you got to be professional at all times. It's not just the supervisors, right? It's everybody. Because if it's a client that you're meeting with and you're being, unprofessional, guess who they're going to tell? The supervisors, right? And then now you're in trouble, right? So what about texting at internship? We talked briefly about boundaries. Should you be giving your cell numbers to your clients? Hopefully that's a solid no for everybody. Does it happen? Absolutely. But for you guys, be mindful, right? Same thing, on the telephone. If you call my office and you hit my voicemail, that voicemail little brief thing, that's all scripted. And it took me a while to script that because it took me a while to get to where it gets because I need to sound professional because if I'm not there, that's the first voice that you guys are going to hear, right? It's like, hey, what's up? This is Duan. Give me a call back. Here's some background music, right? Yeah, same thing with your cell phones. I know it's not as big anymore, but back in the old days when cell phones just came out, you got the ringtones. You know what I'm talking about? Like I had all these like crazy ringtones that you can buy with it for each person, right? Now if you call my phone, there is no more ringtone. Not because of anything else, but because I've been burned a couple of times where I'm at a meeting and all of a sudden, my wife called and it's Al Green, saying, okay, that's not cool, right? And so you got to be mindful of all this stuff, right? Appearance-wise, again, how should your appearance look different from that of the university at your internship? How should you be dressed? Professional? Yeah. Closed-toe shoes, right? No heels for social work and counseling. Why is that? A lot of walking, kind of. Driving, safety issue. Why if your client starts chasing you down? Now, unless you guys can run really fast in heels, more power to you. But I have never seen any races where someone has won in high heels, right? Again, I tell you guys, this is not a fashion show. You are not going clubbing. This is not where you meet your husband or your significant others or your partners. This is work. Dress accordingly, okay? I don't need no hoochie mama club scene. And then for the guys too, stuff should not be sticking out where they shouldn't be sticking out, right? And I'll be honest with you, and I highlight this because I know I personally do not have a good sense of fashion. Like there are days I walk out and my wife's like, nope, go back. I'm like, okay, is this okay? It's like, no, let me just help you. Right? And so I know that sometimes I need a second set of eyes to tell me that this is okay or not okay or whatever, right? My kids are first to judge me very quickly. It's like, oh no, Dad, you're not walking out there. And I'm fine with that for the most part. We joke around with it, but I'm also very mindful of this, right? So if you don't have a good sense, my suggestion to you is ask somebody, ask your partner, ask your family members, whoever it is, like, hey, is this okay, right? At work, it's different, right? Why is it different from that of work and as an internship? Or should there be a difference? Right, okay. Anything else? Just because the staff are wearing certain things, again, you are not staff, right? You are not staff. You are an intern, right? That kind of goes to the other thing. Just want to make it very clear. You are not equal with the staff there. You may be doing the same job as they are and have the same similar responsibility, but you are nowhere close to being equal. They will throw you under the bus much quicker than anyone else will. Right? So just because you're buddies with them, and you go out to lunch with them, and you share Facebook, and you Snapchat, and all that fun stuff, you are not equal. And so you got to be dressed differently and have a higher standard than that of them, right? You know, I can probably get away with coming into the office in the summertime wearing shorts, but my administrative assistants cannot and will not, right? It's just the way it is, right? Does that kind of make sense? Questions, comments? How is that different from being out in the public? From everything else? Should you be always talking like a professional? That's not realistic, right? But be mindful of when you're talking, because someone else may be overhearing what you're saying who is in the field, right? The other day, I was walking out to my car because I forgot something. There was this gentleman that was walking towards me, and I'm like, I kind of think I know this guy, but I don't know this guy. Because I meet so many people, and I'm really bad with faces and names, you know. But I'm like, there's something about this person that's kind of familiar. You walk by, eye contact, hi, how are you doing? Good morning. We went on. I came back to you know, from getting stuff out of my car, and guess who's in the office? Same guy. Guess who I'm meeting with for that day in that meeting? Same guy. And he's the director of one of the agencies that I need to work with, right? And he's like, I know you. I'm like, yeah, well, let's talk about how we might have known each other. And yeah, we crossed paths many times, right? But I could have been an asshole and walked by him like, hey, what's up, or whatever, or just ignored him. How would that have looked if I came back to the office and I had to talk to this guy for the next hour and a half, right? So gotta be mindful of that. Emails in public. Again, I can't tell you how to do it, but I just want to remind you, just be mindful of where that email could go, right? You may have no intentions of whatsoever of any malice or whatever. But again, we also know, and hopefully if you don't, you recognize that that email could be misconstrued in so many ways. Same thing with the text, okay? So be careful about all that stuff, right? And the appearance-wise, again, be mindful of how you dress and how you look outside, right? I get it, everybody has their own style. I don't want to squash that, but on the same token, you're a professional, right? Think about how and what that means to you. Even that you're on your own time and you're at the club or whatever, right? It's important, right? I sound really old, don't I? It's like, man, okay. So a little quick thing about social media. Is that clock wrong? Only 10:30. So let's talk about social media because that came up a little bit too. Okay. So how does this has to do with professionalism?
I think that nowadays when you interview, they don't even look at your resume, they can just see where they see what attached to it. That's your like unofficial resume. They're already looking at that before you can your actual resume.
Yeah, they do. What else?
I know when I interview with my internship site, they ask if, they ask if they can screen the social media. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was one of our questions for those social work folks here, right? What else?
I know that some companies focus like parties,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's crazy how everybody like Snapchats everything. Like you don't even know that you're being Snapchatted.
Yeah.
They don't even tell you.
And they should be. They should, by law, legally, if they're gonna put it out there. You know, especially with schools, you have to write a disclaimer or sign a disclaimer that you're going to be filmed and potentially used in, you know, commercials, whatever. But yeah, Snapchat is huge, right? What else? So what else about social media that you need to be mindful of? Yes?
I think also keeping boundaries of not allowing clients to like try to add you on Facebook or something.
We'll talk about that too. But here's my thing. For those who say, yeah, you know, I got it on private, it's all locked, we're good. You're wrong. There will be ways for them to find out, right? Especially for those in counseling and social work. Again, I tell my students all the time, as much as you're trying to assess who they are and what's going on with them, guess what they're doing to you? And here's the kicker, they have more resources than you do. Some of these guys are very, they're very savvy with what they need to do. And so if you think for a minute that you can, completely go off the grid with social media nowadays, it's too hard, way too hard, right? And so why is this all important? Why do I take at least, a couple minutes to talk about social media and other stuff? Because at the end of the day, this is probably the one thing that's going to make or break you guys in your field. When I went to school, I graduated. The year I graduated, there was this case that happened in Chicago where this law student graduated from law school, got a great job at one of the best firms in town. Now, upon his first day of the job working, they did a background check and they did a Google search. And a whole bunch of his pictures came up when he was in college, and he belonged to a fraternity. And a lot of those pictures was of him, doing what most folks do at fraternity parties, was getting drunk. And based off of that, they rescinded their job offer. Now, he tried to sue because he's a law student, and he lost. Most companies nowadays are at-will companies. They can fire you at will. They don't really have to give you a reason why. You piss me off, I'll go talk to HR, we figure it out amongst the legal team how we can go about getting you out, and that's it. And so, for him, he lost that. We had situations where social media plays a huge role in your career, right? Now, we had one student who was interning, or a couple of students, second year student was going to intern, and I don't know which I'm not really good with social media, but there's one where they can put little emojis after your name or your stuff. I don't know what that is, but he had a martini glass and a beer, like a beer can and whatever. And they did an internet search and they just saw that piece. They saw his name, they saw the little 4 emojis that's after his name. And based off of that, he didn't get the internship. It was for a substance abuse facility, and they connected that to that. Now you may say, man, that's getting really technical, right? Anybody thinking that? That's pretty technical. But why would you think the agency did not give him that placement?
It's not taking it seriously.
Okay, you're not taking it seriously. What else?
It has to be a role model. You can't preach sobriety.
What happened if your client goes home and said, hey, look, let's check out who's Duan Tran? And they see that. Yeah, it's like, how can you preach something and you're doing something differently, even though they're just emojis? They're just emojis. They're not even pictures of him drinking or getting high or whatever. It's just emojis. But that's where a lot of agencies are heading towards, right? I had another student, and these are all real life cases, so that you guys don't fall into this. Breaking Bad, anyone seen or heard about Breaking Bad? So how they do the captions is or the titles BR, they're all chemical symbols, right? So he thought it would be cool if his name was named after chemical symbols, similar to that of Breaking Bad. So comfortable moving forward, right? Anyone have any issues with that, with social media being such a big presence?
One thing, the LA Health Academy, we had to Google our name, see what came up. And I was surprised my picture would come up.
Yeah.
Because of LinkedIn and then other scholarships that I've won in the past that they've documented.
Mm-hmm.
And things come up and I'm wow.
Yeah, right. Who here kind of thinks opposite? We're hey, look, this is way too much privacy. This is my personal life. I should be able to do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with school. There needs to be a clear distinction. Anyone feel like that? Come on now. I do sometimes. But again, this is part of what the reality is, right? And here's the thing, it's freedom of speech is just that. But again, it's very different now that you guys are all professionals, right? You guys are not, you know, the general population. Most people don't have a master's degree, right? Most people are not in this realm of professionalism. And so there's that standard that you guys need to uphold, right? And it's important, right? We had cases, many cases, where this is becoming a huge issue now, right? Where does our privacy ends? Where does the school takes over, right? Now, some of you guys have mentioned, like when you're doing, you know, job search or getting interviewed or even the school, they're checking you guys out. I know we did. Some of you guys, not every single one of you guys, so relax. But I know we did. You know, oh, who's this person? You know, we see what we can get. Now, that may sound cost being unfair or whatever, but that's, again, social media has taken on this new mentality where it's in there and you can't take it back. Once you put something out there, there's no way of taking it back. You can pay a lot of money to agencies to make it more challenging and difficult to access whatever it is that you're trying to hide. But nowadays, if someone wants to find something, they'll find it, right? And so be very mindful of that. You know, Snapchat, I know that, you know, before when it first came out, it's like, oh, 30 seconds and it's gone forever. It's not gone forever, right? And if someone ever hacks the mainframe, all that stuff is there, right? And so all the stuff that you've been sending could be potentially be used against you, right? And again, why am I stressing all this stuff out? Because for me, personally, you guys have worked really hard. I don't know, maybe some of you guys didn't. But so most of you guys, hopefully, have worked really hard to get into a master's program. And for the next 2 years or so, it's going to be challenging. And I would hate that something that you did in the past or presently or in the future, as maybe as minute at the time of the moment, to come back and bite you and cost you from getting a job that you want, right? Because that's, you know, again, at the end of the day, it's about getting that job, right? And so it's really important to be mindful of that. Any questions about social media? You know, we, like I say, most companies nowadays, they do a search. You know, they do a search before you even get an interview. And if you already got your interview, they'll search again. For those child welfare folks, I know there's a couple of folks. If you ever plan on working for the county, especially in LA County, that's the first thing they do. And if anything comes up suspicious, you're done. There's no recourse. They don't need to talk to you, right? And so be mindful of all that stuff, okay? So we talked a little bit about boundaries and confidentiality. And so, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to do it. I'm just giving you some ideas to kind of prolong your professionalism a little bit, which is, personally, in the next couple of years, if you can, refrain from, you know, put your account on inactive, right? There's no need. You know, there's no need to say, hey, first day at the internship, selfie. No one really cares, right? I'm sorry, but no one really does. But why does that selfie could potentially hurt you?
Why are you on your phone?
Why you're on a phone? Oh, now I know where you work, right? Selfie with a little kid because he's cute, right? Then nothing happens, right? Or maybe now you're like 3 months into it. Oh God, I hate my internship. Got to go back again. You know, hashtag the grind. Right? It's your own personal venting. Because some people use Facebook for that. How could that be misconstrued, and what happened if the agency pulls that up?
Well, it exposed if the kid was a client or some sort, they're exposing him.
You just broke confidentiality, right? Going to the park to play with the students or with my kids. I love these kiddos. Hashtag, I love social work, whatever. Now it's out there, right? Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, the other day, I was going through some of my old photo albums. Yes, back in the old days, we had photos. And I used to work at a camp, a summer camp. And I would take tons of pictures of these kids. Now, looking back, that's kind of dang freaky. You know, it's like, why am I taking pictures of these little kids? They're not even my kids, right? What the hell am I doing with all these pictures? But at the time, everybody was doing it. Any camp counselors around here? Okay, hopefully, lesson learned, do not take pictures of your clients, ever. There's never, ever a time or a need to take pictures with your clients, especially for your own personal use, right? But I had all these pictures, and they were cute kids. You know, they brought back some really cool memories of our experiences, but looking back, I broke a whole bunch of rules here. No one ever trained me, no one ever told me about all this stuff, about confidentiality and whatever. And so, had that ever came out, I would have been in the world of hurting, right? And so be mindful of how this all works out, okay? Even though you don't mean it, again, it can be misconstrued very easily and very quickly, okay? We've had students, because of what they posted on Facebook, got expelled from the department. And I'll be honest with you, we do not have time and energy to snoop around and to troll. How we find out is either through your clients, your internship, or your employer. Again, as I mentioned, there's a lot more eyes out there than here, right? Your clients are going to be the first to troll you guys more than anyone else. So yes, do that Google search, see what comes up, and see what it is. And if there's some bad stuff, figure out how to get rid of it, right? And so be mindful of that, right? Like I say, with our program, we have a zero tolerance. We don't ask why. We just expel and we're done. There's no need to figure it out, because once you break confidentiality, we're done, right? And that's when stuff really hits the fan, and that's what reality really is, right? Because now you're professionals, no redos, right? So HIPAA, anyone familiar with HIPAA? You should. If not, you will be very familiar with that, right? All this stuff is because of that, right? Records and field, you know, some of you guys are going to have cases, clients where you have to go do home visits, right? Again, just, you know, I throw this in here because it all falls under confidentiality, which is, you know, you need to have that thing secured in like a lockbox. Laptops need to have a password. You know, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started working here and I figured out how to put my work email onto my phone, the minute I did that, they asked me to, you know, you have to have, it has to be password protected and all that stuff, right? And so be mindful of all that stuff, okay? Transportation of client, right? Information and also transportation of client. You got to be mindful of all that stuff, okay? When you're transporting, should you act, you know, how does professional look like when you're transporting a client? You know, what are some of the guidelines that you should have? You know, like for me, I have all these like scripted stuff that already played out. It's like when you know, if a kid sits in my car, you know, window has to be up. There's no rolling the window down. Don't touch the radio. You know, don't roll the window down and say, hey, look, this is my therapist. Peace out. You know, none of that stuff, right? So I go over the ground rules with them way early on, right? And so you got to have some type of understanding of that expectations for your, you know, for each of your guys' career, right? How long do I have?
It's
11:30?
11:15.
Okay. So I got about 10, 20 minutes. Questions? I know, I answered some of you, hopefully answered some of you guys' questions. The job thing, I'm still trying to figure out what it is that you asked. Yes. That's a great question. So the best answer I can give you is this. Do not feel like you have to give an immediate response. Okay? Take a little moment, kind of reflect back, and it's okay to say, you know what, can you give me a moment? I'd rather have you say that than go and just like, and then have to retract it from back, right? And so when you respond, I think the biggest thing is, again, it's going to have a lot. Also, you know, the other component to that is just time and experience, right? Because it's easy to sit up here and tell you, oh, well, this is the correct way of responding to somebody who's upset at you or whatever. How did I know that? Because I had to go through that and experience that myself, right? But when working with a challenging client or parent or whoever, I've always you know, and this is my saving grace, is that I try to be very calm and even keel. And so I don't escalate when they escalate. Because I realize, you know, and for some of you guys, you know, that whole countertransference kicks into high gear. And when you escalate, it's a power control at that point. And lesson one, you know, number one, when you're doing power control, who wins, you or the client? Who wins in a power control situation? Client always wins. What I mean by that is they can walk away, give you the finger, and never see you again. You lost. You didn't get to help them, right? They go and they tell your supervisor that you were being a jerk to them. You lost, even though you weren't. You still lost, right? At the end of the day, it's about maintaining that relationship with your client. And if your client feels that you think above them or that you don't respect them, you've lost. You can't do therapy with someone who doesn't think that you respect them, you know? And so when you get in a power and control situation, you're always going to lose when you engage in that. And so avoid that power and control, right? What does that look like? Figure out what's going on, help them educate them about the situation in a more calm way, and leave it as that, right? Have there been times where I'm like, okay, look, I have, you know, it's a losing situation, but I need to make sure that the client's safety is in order, is met. And so, yeah, I'll put my foot down. But most of the time, you know, you work through that. But you always try to be mindful of that power and control, right? Does that kind of help you? Yeah. Other questions? Job. What was the question again?
Like, how do you approach someone that you know is like that supervisor? That how do you ask them for like opportunities?
Thank you. So for me, about asking, it's two things that before you ask, because for me, you got to kind of prove yourself first, right? You got to have, you know, if I'm going to put my name to endorse you, then I got to know that you're a good person, right? And so it's about acting and being professional and seeing that and having a good track record. And then once then, it's like, hey, you know, it's just a matter of approaching them saying, I'm looking for, you know, a letter of recommendation, or I'm looking for, oh, I noticed that there's a new position that just came up within the agency. I'm wondering if you would think that that would be a good fit for me, right? And it's about having that relationship. Because I've had times where when I worked for children's services up in Oregon, and I thought about moving out to California. And so at the time I knew the director really well. And I'm like, hey, let's ask the director for some connections and get a job down here. And she came up to me and she's like, you know what, Duan, I like you too much to even offer you to even do that. There's no way I would do that for you. And I was a little offended at the time, but then I realized she was looking after my best interests. And I appreciated that because we had that relationship. Because it's not all about just the job, right? It's also about understanding whether or not you're going to be successful at that job, right? So that's how I would kind of approach that. It's always, you know, like I say, for me, it's showing your work first before you start demanding certain things, right? I don't ever ask for a job. It's usually them come and say, hey, look, I noticed that you're doing this. I'm wondering if you might want to consider doing this. And they'll be honest, there's days that I resisted many times. But then, you know, I end up conceding here and there, depending on, you know, after I get a moment to kind of think about it. then I'll reconsider. Right? Does that kind of help?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That one stuck with me for a while. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
This isn't related to the PowerPoint slide, but I was just curious, like, why, like, how did you get into this field? What,
Social work or teaching?
social work.
Back when I was a young kid. No, so when I was in college, I was a pre-dental major. Yes. So my game plan was this: become a dentist, open up a shop in the inner cities, get interns to come in and provide free service for the low-income families. So that was my thought process. Did that all the way up to my last semester, 3 classes left. One of those classes, I got an F. Walked into the final with a B average. I don't know what the hell happened. Don't care, moved on, but I got out. I walked out with an F. And at the time, I knew that was the end of my potential dental school career because there is no way I could get into dental school with an F. And so quickly, I found this field called behavioral science, which is kind of like social science here at Fullerton. And I did that. Now, I switched gears and I found it to be really easy once I shifted gears because the mentality from being in a pre-med, pre-dental program, which is very cutthroat, versus social sciences where like, hey, how you guys all doing? Like, I had my system already laid out. When I was a pre-med or pre-dental, like I had more intel on the professors when they started, what kind of tests they were giving. I had test banks from all the times I traded and got tests. And so I realized very quickly that professors was testing towards their research, not what was on the books. So if I had enough test banks, there's no need to study the books. Study the test, and sure enough, if they taught me for 10 years and I have 8 years worth of tests, guess what? They're gonna repeat that. And somewhere along the line, if I study my tests, covered. And so I did that same concept with social service. I'm not telling you how to do this. So I did that, and I found it to be very easy for me. And so, and then somewhere along the line, I met a lot of folks who just random folks come by and they start sharing me their deepest issues and secrets. And I'm like, I don't know you. Are you trying to pick me up or what's going on? Or this is like really funky. But I realized I had a knack to be empathetic and to talk to people. And so that's where the shift came in. And even then, because of my negative experience, I worked at child welfare, like I mentioned, and I was content being a child protective worker. Bachelor's level, I was making decent money at the time, surrounded by females, we're all happy. I'm like, the only guy there. So I was all good. I was all comfortable. I had all the attention. I loved what I was doing. They started asking me about where or not I wanted to go to grad school because in order to be a manager or supervisor, if you guys ever want to be, administrator, nowadays you have to have a master's level, at least. Back then, it's preferred, but even though if you apply now, it's always preferred. But back then, they're like, hey, if you want to be a supervisor, you have to get your master's degree. And because of my bad experiences in college, I was like, no, I'm good. Let me just do my thing. And it took a while. Like I say, it took them 2 years to come back and offer. And then finally, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take the chance, right? And so that's how I kind of started my social work career. I never thought about doing this in this scale by any means. And so that's how I kind of came into the field. But once I came in, then especially for social work, I realized there are so many cool things you can do as a social worker. And then it's just like, wow, I can move around, especially if you have ADD, you can go all over the place with this place. If you don't like this job, I'm gonna go over here. If I don't like that job or I get bored, I'm gonna go over there. And you can bounce wherever you want to because you have the MSW degree. And so I just found my niche, doing that kind of stuff. Like I say, I did school, never worked in school. I've been in school for my kids, my clients, but never been employed. But yeah, my specialty is trauma and substance abuse. That's totally unrelated to my specialty in school. But it's just kind of progressed through that, and it kind of evolved to where I'm at now. Like I said, I never thought it would be teaching. Never, ever. You know, here I am, right? Other questions?
What was your position when you
So I started off as case manager. So you got the front line, which is the emergency response. So usually they come in 30 days, they work with them. And if something happens and if they can't resolve the issue, they bring it over to the case manager who have it for the majority of the term of the case. In Oregon, because of the way the system is set up, with so many kids being in foster care, they passed this law where like the parents have a year to do what they need to do before the state goes after termination of parental rights and go for adoption. And so I was the case manager for 6 of the 12 months. And then after that, if that doesn't go well, then it goes over to permanent planning, which they work on terminating parental rights. And so I did that for a while, and then I also ended up doing foster home certification, and that was pretty cool. So those were my 2 experiences with child welfare. That was with the bachelor's degree. Yeah, you can still apply right now for child welfare and bachelor's degree. It just depends on how well you test.
a friend recently shared she's interested in that field, but she didn't know what positions were out there with the bachelor's or if she wanted to.
There's tons of bachelor's positions, but if she gets a master's degree, now child welfare folks, housework.
I applied, I didn't get
Okay.
it.
My bad. You didn't apply?
But I'm also kind of in between mental health and child welfare.
Okay. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bought CalSec is because there's a stipend that, that will pay parents for everything and then some. You walk out with $16,000 cash in hand. And so it's a nice little push, welcome to the world, money. But yeah, it's important. But the reason why I brought it up is like, if your friend wanted to go to school, there are programs that will help her. And if she wants to go specifically in child welfare, that's the track that will get you closest to that. CalSWEC, CALSWEC, or if you type in Title 4E, like the Roman numeral 4, it's a federal grant. And it's a pretty nice substantial grant. So there's that out there. Other questions, comments? Anything else? Going. I'm out. Okay, thank you guys.
I've noticed some of my friends who are social worker, counseling, or whatever, they end up changing their Facebook names to something that's like not their real name.
And we still find you.
Just wanted to put that.
I'm like I said, I can't stress. For some of you guys are very tied to that. I get it, but as I get, gosh, I feel like I'm getting older. Like it's less important now to have that on social media because of all the potential issues that may have. And it's worth, like I had, random things. Like I had one student who was a friend of another friend, they're all friends on Facebook. And that other friend that they didn't even know that they're friends of started sharing and posting on their Facebook, like pornographic images. And she's like, what the heck? It's like, this is not me. But then now everybody in my Facebook feed is seeing this, and that kind of presents a bigger picture for them. They unfriended that person and they got rid of all that stuff. But it's just those things that are those unknowns and those things that you can't control is what ends up getting you caught up in all that stuff. Even though you don't mean it, but again, it's how the agency, how other people are perceiving it is what really matters. And that sometimes it just, I say it's not the best thing in the world. You know, so again, I'm just trying to word caution. It's like we've had students who, deactivated their accounts for 2 years just so that they don't get tempted to do anything or post anything that may be misconstrued. Right? Yes.
It also helps with time management.
Yeah.
Because I was off for like a year and I felt like I had
Yeah. Right. I think that's another thing too. It's like because we're so tied to these things nowadays, it sucks a lot of our time. I was telling my wife the other day, I went to a concert and I haven't gone to concerts in a long time. Well, I haven't been to an OC concert, at the Pacific Auditorium. And there was all these people who were taking selfies of one another. Like I was completely selfie out. I was like, God, do I look that stupid when I'm taking selfies? Because if I do, this is like really bad for me. It's like, the self-realization that this is the stupidest thing ever. And I'm guilty. I take selfies too. But I'm like, I see all these people who, I'm like, oh, this is not good. It's like every song, every 30 seconds, how many selfies can you have of this thing, but it was like overload for me. And so, yeah, I try to like keep it to a minimum with this, just because. So yeah, it's definitely something to be mindful about. Okay. Again, thank you. Any other questions?
No, that
You
was
sure?
the one last thing that I wanted to put up.